Welcome to the channel. The long awaited. I've been waiting for this collaboration with Camel Finance for so long. Anyway, this is an intro. I hope you enjoy. We're going to have a bit of fun, bit of whiskey out. Camel likes his rum. We're going to have a good old chat, see how it goes, see what we talk about. Just chill out, enjoy, have fun. Now, and then we'll just go where we need to go, really.
Okay, sounds good.
One of the first things I really wanted to ask you, how was your wedding, mate?
The wedding was one of the best days of my life, to be completely honest. It was absolutely amazing. Everything went quite smoothly, but everything went perfectly smoothly, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mrs. Camel looked 11 out of 10. I was really happy about that. Yeah, it was really lovely. We had a good turnout. We only had one couple that was supposed to be coming from Ireland. They got caught up in they had that technical issue at the airport or something.
Oh my God, yeah.
So they didn't make it. But other than that, everyone else managed to get there, which was really good. The day was fantastic. The speeches were great. The food was great. Plenty of drinks. We had sunshine as well in a week of rain. We managed to catch the one day of sunshine. So couldn't have gone any better, to be honest.
Oh, that's brilliant. I'm really pleased for you. I was thinking of you.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for all the well wishes.
Yeah. You certainly get a nice little backing on your channel, don't you? It's took a while for you to get going, but once you got going, probably at the beginning of this year, it really flew for you, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And I've got to say thank you to you as well, because you were there from the very early days and were amongst one of the few people that commented every day. So I have to take this opportunity to say thank you for the support right from the start. Thank you for commenting on every video. I really appreciate it. And it's been an incredibly humbling experience, to be honest.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm finding that myself. It's quite a weird one. I'm pleased to do it. Really pleased to do it. It's a great way for me personally at my age in life to actually just express my thoughts instead of just keeping my thoughts to myself, really.
Yeah. I think it's kind of a lonely space at times, isn't it? Finance. I've found this over the years that you go deep down this rabbit hole. And then when you try to speak to people about it, whether it's family or friends or some guy in the pub, no one really knows it exists. It's a sort of very niche sort of area. So I think the internet's brilliant for that, to be able to reach like-minded people.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I said this in one of my videos before, and it's very personal, isn't it? It's very British, being very personal when it comes to talking about money.
Yeah.
So it can be quite when you legitimately got an enthusiastic mind about just talking generally about money. People just seem to be like, "What you're talking about?" type thing, you know.
Yeah.
It's really weird, really, really weird. So your wedding went well. You had a few days with the family, yeah.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah, we got away for a couple of days. We went to stay in a shepherd's hut locally. We're going on honeymoon next year to America, but we managed to get away to locally for a couple of days. Took the dog. Had a big field that was all closed off. The dog could roam around in, and I even managed to get a bit of trout fishing in for the first time in my life. So
wow.
They had a little river down the bottom. I managed to catch a few little trout. So yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. We did lots of barbecuing. It was scorching hot.
Oh, that's cool.
And it had a wood-fired hot tub, which we sat in the mornings, watched the sun come up. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Nervous?
On the wedding day? I was when I stood at the front of the church. We had a traditional church wedding. And when I stood at the front and people were arriving and sitting down, obviously I was going to say hello and greeting people, but then I had to stand at the front 10 or 15 minutes before. And I think I was quite nervous. A few people said to me afterwards, I looked nervous, but once Mrs. Camel joined, I think it was all right from there.
Yeah, the eyes were for you then, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's all about the Mrs. Camel.
Yeah, that's it.
Nothing more. I'm really pleased. I'm really, really pleased for you. It's a special day. As you probably gathered from some of my videos, I'm right into my family. I love the traditional side of life, and weddings really bring everyone together, don't they?
Yeah, they sure do. Yeah, it was brilliant. I haven't seen some of those family members in a very long time, since some of those got married probably 10 or 15 years ago. So yeah, it was really good. It was really, really good.
That's really cool. And you're into your fishing.
I am a very keen fisherman, yeah, for
So
20,
sea
25
fishing?
years, something like that. I do primarily sea fishing, yeah, because I live near the coast. But I do a little bit of course and match fishing as well, a little bit of carp fishing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Go on then. Tell us what's your greatest day sea fishing?
I had a personal best bass about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that was 49 centimeters long. That was a pretty nice fish. Um,
Wow.
yeah, we looked it up in a local fishmongers and it was selling for about £48, I think. So did
Gee
pretty
whiz.
well there. Yeah, cooked that up, had it with the risotto, and it was amazing. This is Camel, and I really enjoyed that. So yeah, lovely.
That's cool. That's cool. And you try and get out as much as you can.
Yeah, so I try to go at least once a week. I usually go with my brother. One of my two brothers enjoys fishing even more than I do. So I try to go and meet him at least once a week.
Yeah.
Depends on his work schedule and tides and time of day, that sort of thing. But we do manage, I think, to go usually around 3 times in a month at least. So
For sure. Oh, that's really cool, isn't it?
yeah,
Biggest carp?
20.8, I think.
Wow.
But
That's
I'm not a specimen carp angler. That's not very big for a carp. It
no.
sounds big, but I know people that have got PBs of 30, 40, even £50.
Absolutely.
But I typically don't like to I don't like to camp overnight and sleep and get woken up in the middle of the night by the alarms going off. That's not really for me. I prefer to turn up when the sun's shining and fish the smaller lake and see what turns up on the day. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mate, what I will say, I don't want this to become like all about me asking you thousands of questions. If you, I mean, I'm like a little kid. I'll be honest with you, because I ain't gonna blow smoke. I think I blow enough smoke up your backside as it is. And it's really cool from my point of view. Your channel, well, your channel has helped me so much in my little my little endeavors to try and get my head around this investing lark.
Yep.
So yeah, I want to know more about you now. I've got you on the channel, so yeah, just tell me to shut the cup.
No, you feel free to ask whatever you want, mate. So I'll say no comment if I don't feel like answering it. I'll just say no comment. But you feel free to ask as much as you like, mate.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, from a channel's point of view, obviously, creative precious metals. It was always primarily about me trying to be creative around me collecting, stacking gold and silver. But as you know, on the quiet, although I don't keep it that quiet sometimes, I'm a bit of a Bitcoin nut as well.
Yep.
So that's what really I'm so pleased I found your channel. Really do, because that's helped me understand and keep my head pretty level around all the ups and downs, the FUD, the crap, everything that goes on within what I'm trying to learn about, a very complex industry. So I'm curious to know, how did Camel Finance become Camel Finance?
What you mean? Where did I get the name from?
No. Have you always been in finance, or?
Oh, no. I'm from a science background, believe it or not. So I came from a very poor background, very, very poor, breadline poor. And I grew up focused on trying to make some money. That was always my goal. Because as a kid, I can remember growing up and I always looked around me and I thought, all of these problems that the older people have around me, my parents and so on, I thought they could be solved if they just had a bit more money. So I grew up with this sort of money orientated mindset. And growing up, I kept asking people, how do I get money? How do I get financially secure? And they all told me, go to university, get a degree, and then you get a good job and you'll be laughing. So that's actually what I did. I got a chemistry degree. I went to work for the pharmaceutical industry. I held 5 or 6 jobs. I entered as a lab analyst. I went up through the labs for a bit. Then I eventually left the labs and went to an office, did validation and stuff like that. Then I went to another pharmaceutical company and I wound up going for a couple of positions there before settling down as a manufacturing process chemist, if you want to call it that, something along those lines. And so my job was to design and validate the processes for manufacture of tablets.
All right.
And so that is my background as a scientist for a pharmaceutical company. But
wow.
If you play the game like that, then you end up with a salary and a pension and an annual leave, and all of that sounds great. But I realized I was never going to have the money that I wanted to have. I was never going to have the security or the financial freedom that I wanted. And the thing that led me into finance was getting my first ever pension statement through the post after I'd been in the lab for 1 year, my first proper year as in my career.
Yeah.
And it said, if you continue to pay in at your minimum rate that you are, by the time you get to 65 odd years old, you'll have between, and it said 70 to 100,000 pounds. And to be fair, I was on an entry level wage, and I was also didn't know anything about pensions. So I was paying the bare minimum into it. But I realized that it doesn't take a genius, that if I lived to 90 or 95 years old, that was not going to be enough money to retire. Yeah. And needless to say, if you play the game and you work your way up and you end up on a better salary and you start to put more than 2% into it, then you will end up with a bigger pot than 70 to 100K. But 100%. That was what motivated me to start to say, well, okay, how do I felt so scammed, to be honest, CPM. I thought, I've listened to everyone's advice. I went through uni and I got all these jobs and I've worked really hard, and they're going to tell me that I'm going to be living on $2,000 a year when I retire in 40, 50 years time. So yeah, I just thought like this whole thing seems like a scam. And then once I got that pension statement, I realized it's time to start looking into pensions. And from there, I sort of naturally found the stock market, and the rest is history.
Yeah, it's really weird when like, it's a very similar story for me. It's a totally different set of circumstances. But, a couple of years ago, I was looking at my pensions, and I think I mentioned I've got a SIP type pension now.
Yeah.
Previous video before. But I had conventional pensions that have been running for years and years and years. And it wasn't until I actually looked at probably like everybody for many years, I used to get a statement through, never really read it.
Yeah.
You just look at a figure. Didn't understand the figure whatsoever, other than, oh, that's what I'm going to get when I retire one day. But then when I had a chat with, I met a financial advisor through some circumstances, lovely guy. And we looked at he mentioned a few things about my pension, and I looked into it, and I didn't know things about, like, if I die, my wife only gets half, and if she dies, then that's it, it's gone.
Right.
Where's that money gone?
Mm-hmm.
What have you worked all your life for? Yeah. And then I didn't understand about drawdown pensions and passing it on to your children and all this sort of thing. Didn't even know it was available. So for me personally, similar to yourself, you sit there and you think, what am I doing? There's got to be a better way. You're working really hard, and it's surely you can pass some sort of I look at it now as an exchange of energy and time. If my effort and exchange of energy and time isn't put into some sort of wealth that can possibly be handed down to my wife or to my kids, then what am I doing it for? And then that took me down a massive rabbit hole of looking into finance, really, a couple of years ago. And yeah, the rabbit hole is massive, and I'm still in it, and I don't think I'll ever get out of it. And that eventually led me to Bitcoin and channels like yourself, more than anything. So of course, sorry, I'm chatting away there. So you was a chemist, scientist. That's impressive.
Sounds fancy, doesn't it? But
yeah, it does. Yeah, but that's a great thing for people to listen to, isn't it? Because, like you've heard me say a zillion million times, we're led to believe that we're doing the right thing through an institutional way of doing things for years and years and years on that hamster wheel. But is it really giving us what we want?
Yeah.
And then you've got to ask the question, or I've got to ask the question, what do I want? Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So so at some point, I presume, do you work for yourself?
Yeah, I work for myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's been the case for over a decade now.
Yeah. So you took that plunge and thought, I'm going to be into finance and.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, I think I caught the curse, right? And the curse is the first ever time I bought some shares,
Mhm.
they went up 400%. So
Oh dear.
had I have invested my initial capital and then it had gone straight to zero, I probably would have come to the conclusion that this isn't for me, this is a scam, or this is hard, or this is impossible. And I probably would have shied away from it. But by sheer dumb luck, I bought a stock that 9 months later was up 400%. And I
Wow.
could only arrive at the conclusion of this is really easy. I've cracked the code and and it's always going to be this way. So because I'd hit that first trade so well, by sheer dumb luck as well, I didn't know what I was doing. I just bought something because a guy in the office had a large holding in it. And I thought, well, he's a pretty smart guy and he's got plenty of money, certainly more than I had at the time. And he must know what he's doing. So I copied his shares. And like I say, they went up. And then I came to the conclusion that, well, this is the secret to the rich, isn't it? This is what the rich must do.
Yeah.
And then it was a very, very steep learning curve from there. I had probably 4 years of mediocre at best performance. So I would make some money and then lose it and some, and then make some back and lose it and some. And it took a good 4 years before I finally drew a line in the sand and said to myself, I'm never going to allow myself to take a big loss again. I'm never going to allow myself to have huge amounts of open profit and then watch them go all the way back to break even or below. And then that's when I started to really take it seriously. And the thing about trading, I think, is it's 99% risk management and 1% drawing lines on a chart or using indicators or strategy. I'm fairly convinced you could roll a dice or flip a coin and still do okay in trading if you know how to manage the risk, right? And so once I kind of understood this, once I started to really take the risk management side seriously, then everything else kind of fell into line. And I was fortunate enough to get into Bitcoin early enough that I could give myself a bit of a head start. And since then, it's just been something that I'm also fortunate that I really, really love it. So it's easy for me to be face first down the rabbit hole, never looking back. It's easy for me to always be learning, and I really enjoy that. And that was something that was a reward I didn't get in my previous career. It was never really that interesting to me. It became very repetitive. I didn't use a lot of science. You would think I did, but I really didn't use a lot of science. And I used to really resent that because I put so much time and effort into getting a degree and learning all of these crazy things only to get to the industry and then essentially just abandon science altogether. So it was not good when I worked there, but finance, as you know, I think you already said this as well, there's always something to learn. The rabbit hole goes infinitely deep and every day is a school day.
Yeah, for sure. It's really interesting listening to you say that. So just kicking back a little bit on what you just said there, obviously there's a great lesson for everyone doing whatever in life. It always seems like you need to fail a little bit to understand where you need to go. And I know you're in a different industry, but it's always the same principle. And what I admire about what you just said is that you didn't take that as sod it, let's try and find something else. It was a case of, no, hang on a minute, I need to work this out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference between so-called failure and success. If you can put those words into those sort of things, it's how far are you prepared to fail before all of a sudden you sit there and think, whoa, something's wrong here. I'm going to work it out. I've got to work it out. If I don't work it out, I'm just going to keep on doing the same thing and not getting anywhere. I'm probably getting depressed and whatever and failing. So that's really interesting to learn. It seems like that philosophy is consistent across anything you do in life. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. And I would also agree, I would also say that I think a lot of it is to do with perspective. So for me, it was better. I was more comfortable with trying something I loved and failing than I was playing the safe option and staying in my career, but being miserable every day. And in these big corporations, anyone that's ever worked for a big corporation will know this, that nothing is ever good enough. Doesn't matter how hard you work. They call you in for a meeting and an annual review, and they score you out of 5 or out of 10. And the system is designed so that you can never be told you're doing well, because there's the fear higher up that you might relax and start putting your feet up on the desk. So you're constantly being told it's never good enough. You need to work harder. You need to do more overtime. You need to give more blood to the company. And I just thought, like, this is a bleak existence for me personally. And I think keep in mind, I chose the science route because that was the advice I was given as a child. You know, go and be a scientist, they earn loads of money, you'll be comfortable.
Yeah.
I think had I have chosen that path because I was passionate about pharmaceuticals, it would have been different. I would have at least had job satisfaction. I would have at least cared about my work.
Yeah.
I would have been interested by what I was doing day to day. But for me personally, that was not the case. So there was no reward there. And the fear of failure in the stock market was almost non-existent versus the fear of staying in a job that I hated and had no satisfaction and was constantly being hounded by management for not caring enough or not giving enough blood for this company, you know? So I think it's all a matter of perspective. If you care about what you do, it makes things a lot easier. And I don't think there's ever been a hero's story, if you want to call it that, where there wasn't a bunch of failures leading up to the point of success. The only way you learn, I think, and one of the best ways to learn is to fail. And you can't be scared of failure, because if you're scared of failure, then it's going to keep you back from ever wanting to develop and learn.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything you're saying, buddy. It's music to my ears. This is what I love about your channel. And that's very powerful, what you said, you know, a little while ago. There's such a psychological thing going on in what we do as a job. To do something that you think is right to do is far different to doing something that you love doing.
Yeah.
It's massive. It's absolutely massive. The ups and downs are still the same, but if psychologically you can't get up in the morning with a smile on your face and you think, yeah, I'm gonna, you know, I've got a bit of a challenge today, but God, I love doing this. Against getting up in the morning, like unfortunately my wife goes through it, you know, she's getting to a stage where she's just fed up with it, you know, fed up with doing the stuff just to earn money. And quite often I say to her, come on, look, not long now. We'll get you out as soon as we can. But I sit there and I think, God, I'm so lucky, because as you know, I'm a plumbing and heating engineer, and I've been been in the industry for 40 odd years, been self-employed for 22 now. And I've got to love it. Going to work for me is not a chore. Yeah, there might be some difficult jobs to do, but my customers I've known for years, and it's just like going to see a friend, having a cup of tea, doing a bit of work, maybe a little bit of hard work here and there, but loving it, absolutely loving it. And that's such a psychological difference. That's what life should be, I think, personally.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. It's going to be a bleak existence if you have to drag yourself to something that you don't care about, or worse still, that you hate. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It doesn't matter what you do, so long as you enjoy it, so long as you get some reward from it, because you don't want to work all day and not have any sense of accomplishment, right? I mean, that's one of the quickest ways to demoralize the soul, is to work hard all day and think, what was the point of that? What was the point of that? So yeah, absolutely. I think as long as it doesn't matter what it is, but as long as you get a sense of reward, and as long as it interests you, then I think you're going to be okay. And like I said earlier as well, I think it's that matter of perspective, because if you enjoy what you do, the fear of failure at something you enjoy has got to be less than the fear of living an entire working career, 40, 50, or maybe more years, because they keep knocking that pension age back.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's got to be better than staying somewhere where you hate it.
100%. So 4 years into doing what you was doing,
yeah,
it gave you a bit of a kick up the backside. by the sounds of it, to
Good.
try and improve what you're doing from a strategy point of view, from whatever you're doing as a job. How was that next transition for you?
Difficult, because it involves, at least for traders, it involves one, recognition that you have zero control over your own fate, so to speak. So it's easy to look at a chart and say, I think this is going to go up. And then if it goes up, you think, yeah, I'm the man, right? But the facts are, and I say this all the time on my channel, as I'm sure you've heard me say this a bunch of times, the only thing I know is that I do not know, right? That is the only thing I know, that I do not know anything. And,
I love it.
And it's weird because there's this paradox that exists in whether you're a trader or an investor, it doesn't matter. There's this paradox that exists. You have to have enough self-confidence to say, I'm going to be able to pick some investments and I'm going to be confident in those investments. So whether that's buying gold or silver, you have to have a certain level of confidence to say, I'm buying this because I'm confident in my assessment that that is going to yield me a return over the coming weeks, months, years, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And it's the same if you buy a stock, right? You're going to do your analysis on the stock. And if you're really going to put your hard-earned money into that stock, then you're going to have a certain level of confidence that enables you to say, yeah, I know what I'm doing, at least to a certain extent, right? I believe in my analysis. I have this confidence about myself. But paradoxically, you also have to dissolve your entire ego, because if you don't, then you're going to be dogmatic in your approach. If you buy something and it goes up at first and then it immediately reverses, you're going to have no ego. So you can hold your hands up and say, I have no control over the market. And that's where the risk management comes in, right?
Yeah. 100%. It's really funny because I listen to you, I listen to your videos because I comment on them. And it's everything you just said there, and I just think that's what he always says. Even I'm starting to repeat it in my comments to you.
Yeah,
it just so makes sense. And for me, on my puny, stupid little journey that I've been on so far, I've always found that sentiment, emotion, ego gets in the way of everything. Absolutely gets in the way. And as soon as I start to, I always say to him, what would Camel say? What would Camel say? What would Camel say? And it's always the same thing, because I'm not saying that I'm idolizing you or anything like that. It's just purely logical, psychological sense when you're not in control of something. Now, if I fit a boiler, then I'm in control of that installation process. So that whole process I'm in control of to a degree. Well, probably 97% of the time I'm in control of. But from your point of view, and from if I'm investing or trying to put some money into something, I'm so reliant on so many other things happening out of my control, which if I start putting my ego into it or my emotion into it, it gets in the way of my heart talking to me rather than my head talking to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
And so that's why I understand what you say. And it's, for me personally, I don't do this for a living, but I'm trying to improve, my financial position. I admire you. And that's one of the only things I've found with your channel. And I haven't researched them all. I couldn't research them all. I'll be doing it for the rest of my life if that's the case. But as a rule, for all the channels out there, you are consistent with logical sense. And I admire that so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it comes with experience, right? Like I said, there's this paradox that exists with the confidence thing and the ego, but there's also this paradox that exists in money itself, right? Like nobody would want to start investing if they didn't care about money, right? Yep. Everyone gets into this because they want to increase their net worth or they want to increase the amount of income they've got. And again, there's another paradox with that, because for you to succeed in investing or trading, you have to learn to be indifferent to the money. The more emotionally attached you are to the money, the worse it's going to go for you, because when you've got some money coming in, when you buy an investment and it goes up, you're going to be sitting there thinking, yes, I'm the man. And, if you put your money in and it goes down, you're going to be thinking, oh no, I suck. What have I done? The only reason I did this was to increase my net worth, and now I'm losing money. So there's this second paradox that exists where you get into it because you want to make more money, but the only way you can make more money is to first take a step back and accept that you're not doing this for the money, you're doing it for the process, right? You're doing this to learn. And upon developing a process or upon building a foundation of knowledge, only then, once those foundations are laid, are you in a position to actually increase your income or your net worth, right?
100%. 100%. Would you say that that was what your 4 years was all about?
I think the first 4 years was me operating solely from ego, solely from this perspective of, oh, I can take 50% of my salary and invest it in the stock market and it will double or triple. And I'm the man, right? Because I can pick stocks better than Warren Buffett, right? And I was trading penny stocks, and penny stocks, obviously, they have massive volatility. You can buy them at a penny and they could be at 10 pennies the very next day.
Yeah.
And when you're new to the whole thing, it kind of, like I said, I was operating from ego. But of course, when you operate from ego, that also means when things move against you, you're not in a position to manage the risk, because as far as you're concerned, you're the man, you know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So I think that first 4 years, there was a lot of, I made a bunch of money, I lost the money. I made a bunch of money, I lost the money. And it was almost operating from a gambler's perspective, to be completely honest. In hindsight, it feels a lot like I would make some money and lose it and then be thinking to myself, I got to win it back. It's okay. I'll just wait for the next big pump and I'll catch that and I'll win it all back. And that's kind of what you'd expect a gambling addict to say, sitting at a roulette table, right?
100%. As you're explaining that, I'm thinking, well, this is like playing slot machines or going to a casino or, sorry.
No, that's exactly it. And again, it comes back to that paradox. You have to be willing to accept that this is not a game, it's a business. And if I said to you, go and start a heating and plumbing engineering business, right? You wouldn't, with zero knowledge of heating and plumbing, take your hard-earned money and go and start a business, right? You would first want to at least make sure you were qualified to install a boiler. You want to know how a boiler works. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that you would need to know, right? And even if it was a cupcake business, if I said to you, go and start a cupcake business, take £10,000 of your own money and go and open a business, you'd at least want to know something about where to open it, the amount of people you can expect to come in on a day-to-day basis, like how to make cupcakes, how much it's going to cost for overheads, how much it's going to cost for rent. You'd need to know all this stuff, right? You wouldn't just take your money and throw it into a business that you knew nothing about. Yeah. But for some reason, when it comes to investing, people think it's okay to watch a 15-minute or 30-minute tutorial on YouTube, and then they fancy themselves as the next best stock picker,
It's weird, isn't it? It's. Do you think this, because when you bring possibly, this is like gambling, isn't it? When you bring money into it and you think, okay, I've learned a little bit. If I take that chance, I might make £100, 200 quid, £1,000. That is just stupid in my eyes. Just to think that that's going to happen, albeit probably many times in our lives, that's what we think we do. I suppose every time you put 50p or a pound now into a slot machine, you think, oh my God, I might get that £1,000 jackpot.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that, really.
Yeah. And I think this is something years ago, I would have been a bit touchy about this subject for gambling, because a lot of people would say to me often, you've probably heard this, if you ever mention stocks and shares to somebody that's never bought a stocks or shares, they'll say, oh, it's just rich man's gambling, or it's just gambling, right?
Yeah.
And there was a time when I was operating from that ego state where I used to get very, very rubbed up the wrong way about this, because people were just essentially implying that I was a gambler professionally. These days, I have much more, what's the word? I'm way more accepting of the fact that that's essentially what I do for a living, is gamble, right? I mean, right. And then we can talk about what really is gambling. Is driving your car gambling?
Yeah.
Because there is a risk, right? Is going on holiday and getting on an airplane gambling? I mean, we can we can touch around whether or not it's gambling or how you define gambling. But I think the best way to think about it is, if you think of a roulette table with no zero, no green, right? Just red or black, 50-50.
Yeah.
If I say to you, okay, you bet £1, and obviously if you're right, you win £2, and if you're wrong, you lose £1.
Yeah.
You know, it's a 50-50 game. You're probably not going to get very far, right?
Yeah.
But if I said to you, here's the deal, you put £1 on red or black, and if you're right, I'll give you £3 or even £4. And if you're wrong, you lose your £1.
Yeah.
Would you play that game?
Yeah.
Of course you would, because you know, if you make enough bets and your bets when you win come in at £3 or £4 versus when you lose £1, you know you're going to be, you know, doing well over a longer term.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it is gambling in the sense that you never know what's going to happen. I have been gapped down on plenty of times where I buy a stock and I set my stop loss, and then some bad news comes out and suddenly the stock gaps significantly below the stop loss and I lose way more than I had originally intended. It's not something that happens super often, but it's a risk. And to say it's not gambling is kind of false, right? Because we are taking a gamble, but that's investing, right? There's no reward without risk.
But this is I love you, mate.
I love you too.
Your analogy when you say about gambling, it is no different. We pick and choose what we feel, and this is egotistical. When you have a conversation with people, and we can be without us knowing, we can be very hypocritical in our thought process. Yeah. And we're very easy to say, oh, that's gambling. And I love it when you turn around and say, well, crossing the road's gambling, getting on your bike's gambling.
Yeah.
There's so many scenarios that you have no control of, but you get on your bike and you go out on the road and hope everyone else behaves, let alone yourself, you know, in that risk of your journey. And I love it. This is what I love about what you try and portray across on your channel. And I find it very, very, very appealing because it asks a question. If you're prepared to open your mind and actually want to look at your life in a way that isn't so small and just expand your mind on everything that we do, what you do is no different to anything else we do. What I do is no different to anything else. We're all trying to just improve and have a quality of life, and not trying to say, well, it's unfair. This is unfair. It's all too easy to what's the word I like to use? I'm trying to say judge people, and judge people just purely because we don't understand what they do or where we are in life. So, yeah, I love it. I love your analogy, mate. I think it's really fantastic. Thank you.
No worries. And I actually heard a saying just a couple of days ago that I think sort of summarizes this entire bit pretty nicely. And the saying was that net worth doesn't often far exceed personal development.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely true. You know, the more time you put into yourself, the more time you invest in yourself and in learning to dissolve the ego and humble yourself and accept that there are things you can control and there are things that you can't. And you should focus on the things you can control and not the things you can't. And ultimately, if you can do that, I think everything is going to work out okay.
Yeah, 100%. And it's that's a really interesting thing. When you said you come from a poor background, it's a very similar story to myself. And one of my things with learning about money is I've always seen money as a negative from youth. And the reason why I saw it always as negative is because I couldn't have it, or I see the negative outcome of being brought up with others having more than what I had or what my family had. And it's really interesting because I've carried that over in my life for a long time, and always couldn't work out why I couldn't embrace money for what it was, and wealth for what it was. And it isn't until, you know, probably my last 2 or 3, 4 years, maybe, that I begin to change and look at money as not a negative thing, but as a positive thing. And now now my mindset is more acceptable. It's okay. It's okay to have a bit. It's okay to have a bit more than someone else. It's fine. It's absolutely cool. And that's took me down this rabbit hole very differently in looking at money and finance now. It still doesn't make me acceptable for all the shenanigans that are going on, probably within the finance industry, but it is what it is. And I need to get over that and just concentrate on how I see money and what I want for money. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think the weird thing about money is after a certain, there's only, I think when you don't have it, you kind of think, oh, if I had money, I'd treat myself to this, or I'd buy this nice car, right? Or if I had money, I'd do all of these things.
Yeah.
And then again, it's like another paradox. Like when you've got the money, there's only so much stuff you can buy before you realize it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't make you happy. It doesn't, you know what I mean? Like I think the security of being able to say, okay, I'm taking a year off, I think that is priceless. Having enough financial freedom to choose your hours, or to say, no, I need to spend more time with my family this week, I'm taking the week off, without the commitments of a regular job. Time is the only thing, the only commodity that we can't get more of. And it's the only commodity that's actually worth something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, without doubt. I think it's very underestimated about time. That's why I've got like a little time thing in my studio set up, you know, time, I call it Time Corner. It's a massive commodity. And I've got some videos that I'm going to try and put together very soon, incorporating time into what I'm doing with investing. And I see that time and energy, our own personal time and energy, is far more important than anything else, because once we lose that piece of time, piece of energy, and we're not putting it into where we want it to go, then you've lost it forever. So it makes it even harder to do next time around. So I'm beginning to embrace that a lot in even my investment outlook, and seeing that as a quite an important thing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Time is, I mean, it's cliche to say so, right? But no one is on their deathbed wishing they'd accumulated more assets, or or wishing they'd bought another Rolex, or you know what I mean? Like the things you regret on your deathbed is not spending more time with your family, or not having better health, having looked after your health better to give you a few more years.
Yeah, 100%. So anyway, we sound like we're getting a bit morbid now, don't we? Mate, so, okay, you got to your 4 years, you realised a few things, and then you pushed on, and it sounds like you're in a good place with what you're doing. Yeah?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like you've worked for it. So
blood, sweat and tears. I've wanted to quit 2, maybe 3 times.
Yeah.
And I have to thank Mrs. Camel for picking me up when I was down and believing in me when even I didn't believe in myself.
They're priceless, aren't they?
Really are. Yeah, I would have killed. I certainly would have quit at least twice.
Really?
If it wasn't for Mrs. Camel. Yeah, it's a very brutal existence, actually. And if anyone is thinking, should I become a trader? My advice as a professional trader is no, pick something else. Honestly, it's not noble stuff, right? For somebody to win in the markets, they win by somebody else losing to you, right? If you're going to buy a stock, somebody has to sell it to you. And it's either the right time to buy or the right time to sell. It can't be both.
Yeah.
So it's not noble stuff. You know, if you're winning, then you're winning because somebody else is losing to you.
Yeah.
So it's not noble stuff at all. And again, it goes back to that paradox. The only way you get good is to accept that you no longer care about money. Okay. You only care about managing the risk and hitting the performance numbers. And by the time you get to that stage, then even when you make money, you don't really care about it either, because, well, that's how the process works. That you engineer a system that incrementally increases your wealth over time, assuming you're good at what you do. And there are, even when you're a good trader, there are periods in time where you're going to have a terrible year, and that absolutely sucks. And it just is what it is. But that old saying, if there's a million ways to make $1 million, there are plenty of ways that are easier to make money than trading. Starting a business about something you care about is way, way, way easier if you actually care about what you're working on than just trying to pick stocks and be stuck in this doom loop of ever trying to increase your net worth through trading. So my advice would be, if you're thinking about being a trader, don't pick something else.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. Because I'd probably say the same. Well, actually, I wouldn't. I've all through probably my last 15 years, um, I've always encouraged people to like get a trade, get a trade, get a trade. It's like rocking all shit now. You won't look back. Put in your 4 or 5 years of hard work, learning about all sorts of technical stuff. You'll be made for life because good quality tradespeople, especially where I live, I like rocking all shit. They really are, and I am probably, I would say, in the old days when I was growing up, everyone would strive. If you wanted a big profession, it was either to be a doctor, a teacher, someone in the medical industry. Dare I say, a politician? That's like swearing, isn't it? Lawyer, in the law side. That was the things to go to university for. And the rest of us were milkmen, bakers, plumbers, electricians, whatever. Now I see my industry, especially, as almost becoming like the doctors of the years ago, because they're so sought after. So I can't turn around and say like, don't be a plumbing and heating engineer, because I think you should be, without a doubt. And the more as time goes on, if you look at an industry that will probably survive all the time, that we live in a climate where we need heat and water for comfort of living, if we all manage to live in our own homes or whatever in the future. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's a great, and it's the same for electricians now. So I hope people will get into my industry more and more and more.
Yeah, when you say that, thatched roofing comes to mind. In my local area, there are plenty of country houses with thatched roofs.
Yeah.
And if you want your roof rethatched, which I don't know how often, do you happen to know how often they need rethatching?
I don't know off the top of my head, but we've got a thatch roof property 2 doors away from where I live. And I think it's something like 15 to 20 years, something like that.
Yeah. So if you're going to live there for your entire, generation of raising kids, you're going to need it done at least once, right?
Yeah, if not twice.
Yeah, if not twice. And I know in my local area, there's only a couple of people. There's only a couple of people that actually still can do that. And they could just charge whatever they want. And it's upsetting people because people don't want to pay twice as much, but there's no one else in the area. There's no one else. So, like you say, with a learning a trade, if anyone could get in on that in my current area, they could make an absolute fortune. Apparently they're booked up for months ahead of time. And needless to say, if you've got a thatched roof, then if it's leaking or if it needs replacing, it needs replacing, right? There's nothing you could do about it.
100%. In where I live in the West Midlands. Very lucky to live in the Cotswolds. And
very nice.
So, there's some lovely thatched cottages still around all over the place, actually, to be fair. And I do know if you want your roof done, it's at least 2 years to wait. And you pay for this reed. They use a reed, don't they? A certain reed.
Yeah.
To go up on the roof. And 9 times out of 10, you have to cough up probably over a year in advance.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
To pay for that reed.
Right.
Just to secure. Well, that's a bit of a con, I think. But hey, they set the market. It's great. They set the market, It is. There's probably, I see on my travels, less than 3 or 4 companies around the Cotswolds in my area that are replacing or repairing, because they update them, don't they? Thatch roofs. So trades are so underestimated, but we've spent so many years as a society saying you need to go to university, you need to get this degree in, excuse my language, can I swear?
Yeah, it's your channel, mate. You crack on.
Mate, yeah, get this degree, which is a load of bollocks. And but that's what we've all, well, not us personally, but that's what society's really pushed for, and probably the only institutions that have really I'm going down a rabbit hole now, mate.
No, you carry on.
Probably benefit from is the university educational system, and then all these guys are getting into debt like there's no tomorrow, and then coming out of it with not even using those degrees. And probably, I would say, over the last 20 years, it's been a big problem within my industry. And of course, like, you got lots of guys my age just leaving every year now through natural retirement and whatever. And there's nothing being backed up. That's good for the boys that are really hungry for it, that have actually took that step to get into the industry, because then they're becoming in massive demand, and they can start to be like the Thatchers, Well, if you want us, it's a little bit more. This is how much it is, Yeah, it's a strange one, really strange. Our economic position that we're in this Western world. But before we go there, mate, that's really great. So you're really pleased. You learned that. You did it. You're happy doing what you're doing.
Yes, yeah? Very much so.
Cool. What I'd like to talk about is gold and silver.
Okay, sure.
What are your... Do you? Here we go. I know you're a big Bitcoin. We'll get onto Bitcoin in a little while. If that, have you got much time, mate? Or
I've got unlimited time for you, mate. Unlimited time.
My God, you shouldn't say that.
Well,
we might have to do this at 2 or 3 parts.
We can do whatever you need to do, and yeah. But for now, I've got unlimited time.
All right.
So cool. Yeah, whatever you want to do.
Okay, we're cracking into the Bitcoin story, if that's okay. A little bit later.
Yeah.
Gold and silver. I hear you talk about gold and silver every now and then on your channel.
Yeah.
First question is, are you physical with it?
Yes.
Okay.
I honestly don't see the point in... I mean, I see the point, okay? If you want extra exposure in your SIP, or if you want to make some trades without having to... Trading, if you're going to make a short-term trade or even a medium-term trade, buying physical bullion is not ideal, is it? It's difficult to manage the risk. It's difficult to have a stop loss. If you're buying silver, you're going to have to pay 20% VAT, and then you're going to guaranteed to be in a loss. So paper, gold and silver, absolutely fine if it's a short to medium-term trade. But I think if you're going to hold physical gold and silver as an investment for the long term, I don't see the argument for using paper derivatives.
Okay. What's your personal? What would be your personal? It's difficult, really. I don't want you to give any advice, because that's not right. What would be your experience if you was going to get into gold and silver at a physical level? What would be your holding time as a rule?
Yep. Well, I think it's important to make a distinction before I answer this question.
Right.
With any investing, it is important to understand that different age groups and different financial backgrounds and different personal circumstances plays a huge role, right? Yeah. So if you're a young 20-year-old and you've got no kids and you still live at home with your mom and dad, and you're just trying to increase your net worth so you can maybe get a deposit for a house, or so that you can have a bolster to your pension when you're eventually at pension age, then you can afford to take significantly more risk than, say, somebody that is 50 or 60 years old and has a family, has kids, and has worked their entire life for a big pension basket or a pension pot. If you've worked your entire life and built up a pension, then you don't want to be taking large risks with that, right? You don't want to be risking taking out a 50% chunk of your pension that you've worked 40 or 50 years for.
Exactly.
Right? Similarly, if you're fortunate enough to own your house with no mortgage and you don't have any credit card debt and your car is paid for, then you can afford to allocate more to investing than perhaps somebody that has a mortgage and has credit card debt and has 2 cars on finance, right? Yeah. So I think it's important to understand that first of all, there are risk profiles depending on age, depending on personal circumstance. With that said, what do I think about investing in metals?
Yeah. So okay. Let's try and, because I do you'd answer it that way, because it's fantastic coming out of someone else's mouth rather than mine all the time. If we can break it down into a demographic, of probably 20 to 30, 30 to 50, over 50s.
Yeah.
Physical, from a physical silver point, not a trading point of view, physical silver point of view. Do you see 20 to 30 as a good idea?
To be honest, think that if you're 20 to 30 and you're looking to invest in something, you should be looking for something with a higher risk profile and a higher volatility than silver. Now, at the same time, there is absolutely nothing wrong with owning everything, right? Yeah. You can own gold, silver, and Bitcoin, and some stocks and some ETF trackers. There's no reason to say, I have to go all in on one asset. In fact, it's kind of malpractice to go all in on one asset, right?
Yeah.
Better to have a basket rather than just one thing that you're all in on.
Yeah.
I think the younger you are, the more risk you can take. So if I was a 20-year-old, I would probably be thinking Bitcoin is the way to go.
Yeah.
Of course, it depends on the amount of money you have as well, right? So an ounce of gold, if you're going to buy gold coins, probably like 1,500 quid today, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Versus a silver coin, you could probably pick up for 30 quid or less.
Yeah.
So again, are you going to... It depends largely, doesn't it, on what your income is like or how much money you have to invest. I think as we approach the other end of that demographic, as we approach the 50 to 60 end of the spectrum, then gold and silver, I would say primarily gold, becomes the play with a smaller allocation to Bitcoin.
Yep.
And the reason for that is pretty simple. As you get older and as you have worked your entire life to build up a pot, it's probably better to take less risk and try to chase less return rather than to be trying to chase 500 or 600% in Bitcoin, but risking a 70% drawdown.
Yeah. 100%. So that's really cool that you said it like that. So really, would you say probably regardless of how old you are, you've got to look at what your long-term goal is and definitely diversify around that to produce that long-term goal? Would that make sense?
Yes. I feel like have I dodged this question like a politician here?
A little bit.
Can you ask me the question again and I'll try and answer it more directly for you?
It was just purely because obviously a lot of people from my end will be looking at this from a gold and silver point of view.
Okay.
I know we're going to talk about Bitcoin anyway, because I think it's really important.
Yeah.
And, I don't like shying away from it because it's very important to me personally.
Mm-hmm.
But from a silver and gold point of view, if you was going to be in that demographic age, like my son is 21.
Yeah.
Okay. What is it a good idea to get involved in silver, gold? And I know that's about how much money you've got and how much you can spend on it.
Yeah.
20 to 30. Do you put the same sort of concentration, or would you put the same sort of concentration if you was 30 to 40 or 40 to 50?
I think I would be, if I was 20 to 30, I would be putting the majority in higher risk assets like Bitcoin, because you've got the time, you've got the years ahead of you to even out the volatility, right? So if I was 20 to 30, I would be looking at going more towards Bitcoin than gold and silver, but I would want an allocation of gold and silver as well.
Okay, cool.
And I would probably also want an allocation to the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ.
Sure.
If I'm honest.
Mate, I love you. This is exactly how I think. It's great. Thank you so much.
And another thing I would probably add is, again, for a longer term person, for somebody that's 20 years old, then I don't want to name stocks, but Bitcoin derived or blockchain derived stocks would probably also be a pretty good play. Because if we just assume at some point Bitcoin's going to go up in value, if we just assume that there's going to be some level of adoption that continues to increase, then Bitcoin derived stocks, miners, exchanges, those sorts of things are likely going to do well over the longer term. Okay. Then as we get to 30 to 40, it's probably time to start being slightly more responsible. So dialing back on the Bitcoin miners, increasing physical gold and silver, keeping a balance of stocks or ETF trackers or S&P 500 trackers, something like that.
Yeah.
And then as we get to 50 to 60, if I was 50 or 60, would I want more than 10% allocation to Bitcoin? No, I don't think so. And I love Bitcoin. You know, I love Bitcoin, right? But I'll say this, I have a portfolio for my mum.
Yeah.
Okay. And she holds a small amount of Bitcoin. I'm trying to do the maths in my head. Sure. I would say it's probably in the neighborhood of 7 to 12% Bitcoin exposure.
Sensible.
She holds probably in the same neighborhood in silver, and the vast majority of the rest is in physical gold.
Okay. Was that physical silver?
Physical silver, yep. Okay. No paper derivatives or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so you can see the risk profile versus for my youngest brother, who is in that 20 to 30 category, who holds somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 85% in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So you can see that kind of is consistent with what I was saying earlier. The younger you are, the more time you got to ride the volatility, the more risk you can afford to take. Yeah. And as we get from 20 to 30 towards that 50, 60 plus neighborhood, then it's probably time, at least from my perspective and what I would do and what I have done for my family's portfolios, is to keep some exposure to Bitcoin, but move it more towards gold and silver. And of course, you can have some stocks if you need some stocks.
Okay. From the exposure to Bitcoin, is that direct exposure to Bitcoin as the asset, Bitcoin as the asset, or is that through things like MicroStrategy or anything else like that? Or maybe through, hopefully, if we get an ETF soon.
Excuse me. I personally, again, I think Bitcoin is the ultimate bearer asset. Okay. Yeah. And I kind of think this about physical gold and silver as well. I don't really see the point, like I said earlier, unless you're making a short or a medium term trade and you need a way to have a stop loss and manage the risk, then I don't see the point in holding paper gold or silver or paper Bitcoin. Yeah. And when I say paper Bitcoin, that includes having Bitcoin that you've bought, but you've left on an exchange, whether that's Coinbase or whatever exchange you're using, Binance. Having Bitcoin on an exchange is not the same as having it in your own possession in cold storage.
Like that.
Exactly like that. And if we really think about why, okay, all of these instruments, silver, gold, Bitcoin, they are anti-fiat, right? Yeah. They are anti-establishment, if you like. And the point in holding these things is that they carry no counterparty risk. But if you choose to use ETFs, paper gold, paper silver, if you choose to buy Bitcoin and leave it on an exchange, then instead of having no counterparty risk, we are now extending trust to whoever it is that's in charge of these types of instruments and derivatives. So from my perspective, and I've had this perspective for many, many years now, if you're going to hold these things, hold them in your hand, because if you don't hold them in your hand, then you don't really have them.
Still there?
Yeah.
Oh, right. I forgot. Went really quiet then.
Did I?
Yeah. Well, I can feel your passion coming through, buddy.
It could be the rum.
Yeah, it could be the rum, but that's what it's all about. I tell you what, just a sidestep, mate. I think oh, crikey, before I went on holiday, I think you had a bit of a rant, and I think I replied on one of your videos. I was listening to it while I was driving around, and I thought, oh my God, the real passion's coming out from Camel here. I tell you what, it was so cool to hear. It's lovely to hear, because you get authenticity from when you hear it in someone's voice. Whether they're right or wrong, it doesn't matter to me. it's just, wow, this person really believes in what they're saying. You know, they're getting a bit passionate about it and it's coming across. So it's really cool. That's why I just said, well, we're just talking about Bitcoin and holding it. And I'm thinking, whoa, hang on a minute. We'll go there in a minute. Okay. So there's a question from me with silver and gold, and trying to understand from my personal point of view, the market. Okay. And how the market works within the silver and gold market. But I often hear a lot of people talk about manipulation of market price. Probably refer to the spot price of things. Can you explain to me from your point of view, probably from a more professional point of view, how that works or what that's all about or what you think it's all about?
Yeah.
Why it's there, really.
Are you talking specifically about Bitcoin? Specifically about silver and gold?
Silver and gold, silver and gold market,
Silver and gold. So this goes all the way back to hundreds of years ago, when gold was stored by jewelers and goldsmiths, right?
Okay.
So all these years ago, I wish I had the number. I'll throw 200 years ago out there. It could be 300 or 100. I don't know.
That's
but
fine.
a long time ago, the goldsmiths had the safes, right? Okay. And what used to happen was the goldsmiths would say to the villagers, you can store your gold with us and we'll give you a bit of paper that says CPM deposited X amount, right? And then when you wanted your gold out of the safe, you could take your bit of paper back into the goldsmiths and redeem your gold.
Okay.
But very, very quickly, the goldsmiths worked out that that nobody would come all at the same time to withdraw all of the gold. So very quickly, they realized they could issue more paper claims on the gold than they actually had gold in the vault. They could spend the gold that their customers had deposited and just continue to issue paper claims. And they would never be found out so long as every single one of their customers didn't show up simultaneously to withdraw all of their gold at once, right?
Okay.
And so that is hundreds of years ago. Humans never change. And it's the exact same template today, right? And I made a video recently where I showed this whole ETF thing and the disclaimers they put in there. It's a well-known fact. There are 10 to 1 and up to 20 to 1 claims per ounce. So if you buy the gold ETF, allegedly it's 1 to 1. You buy an ounce of gold and there's an ounce of gold with your name on it in their vault somewhere. But just as the same way the goldsmiths used to play this trick where they would issue more paper claims on the gold, the ETFs do the same thing. And so if they do the same thing, then they have the ability to short sell gold and put sell side pressure on the market without actually having to have the physical gold itself. And so how they manipulate, if you want to use that word, the price of gold, I would say suppress the price of gold, is they're able to put sell side pressure on the spot price without actually needing the metal.
Okay. Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
What would be the purpose of someone doing that? Why would they want to do that?
They don't want the canary in the coal mine to be dropping dead, right? The canary in the coal mine analogy, of course, you keep a canary in the coal mine so that if there's a gas leak, the canary drops dead and its little lungs they give you an early warning signal so you can get out of there before you will drop dead, right?
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing with gold and the dying fiat currencies. The higher the price of gold goes, the more it's a canary in the coal mine for the dollar or the pound or whatever fiat currency it's priced in dying.
Yeah.
So they have a vested interest in keeping the lid on the price of gold so as not to alert the masses to the fact that purchasing power is being destroyed every day, week, month, and year.
Okay. So that's brilliant, mate. Now I understand the reason. So in simpleton terms, they are, to keep the fiat system going, they're deceiving us into, if the true price of the value of gold was its true price, then it would say that everyone needs gold rather than fiat. Would that be right?
Yeah. And there's a website, I think it's called US Government Debt Clock.
Oh God,
Type that in. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Somewhere down the bottom right-hand side
Yeah.
is a metric or a couple of metrics that
Yeah.
show you, if you divide the amount of physical gold that actually exists rather than the paper claims by the debt, and you work out how much gold would need to be to service the debt or to make parity with the debt, then you find the price is north of $10,000.
Okay.
So this suggests that the price of gold should already be at 10K. It should already be north of 10K an ounce.
Yeah.
Instead of the roughly 2K that it's at currently.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if it was, then it would be, like I said, that canary in the coal mine. It would be that signal that let everyone know the dollar is dying.
Okay. Sorry. I won't believe what just happened. I just opened the door to let the cat out, not realizing that there was 2 pairs of my trousers on top of the door drying, and they just fell on the cat, and the cat shit itself. So, sorry, mate.
No worries at all.
That's what I love about. I will always do these raw. What happens, you know. Yeah. So yeah, I get that. So it's in. Is it JP Morgan?
Yep.
I've always been referred to as the orchestrators of controlling this price.
They've been fined a bunch of times for manipulating the market, but not just gold, to be fair. They've also been done for manipulating the VIX to suppress volatility and a whole heap of other stuff. But I don't think it's just JP Morgan. All of the, big banks are involved in the same foul play.
So this is, so from a especially gold point of view, is this the same context with silver, would you say?
I don't think so. I mean, potentially. I'll be honest, actually. I think the absolute truth is I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. But mainly gold because of what it is, what it's been used for in the past.
Well, the interesting thing from a big bank perspective and from a central bank perspective is they have been buying since around 2018 record quantities of gold.
Yeah.
But I don't often see them having been buying loads of silver. Now, that it could be the case that they buy a bunch of silver as well as the gold, and maybe I've missed it. But it seems to me that silver is almost just like this higher beta play, meaning if gold goes up a bit, silver is going to go up more, right? Okay. I'm sure the central banks do hold some silver. They probably hold platinum and palladium and all these other precious metals as well. But to me, it is gold that is the god market of this, and it's gold that the central banks keep buying.
Okay.
And so would I be surprised if they use these same price suppression tools as they do on gold, on silver? No, I wouldn't. But have I seen a great deal of evidence to support that? Not personally. That said, I don't pay a great deal of attention to the silver market as a trader. Like I said, it's the higher beta play. So if gold's going to start moving to the upside, it's time to get long silver as well, because silver is going to outperform gold. That's just typically how a trader would think about it.
Sure. That's interesting, isn't it? So, this is where I struggle, or I've personally struggled, because we all, like the plebs, I call us plebs, at this end of society, we look at gold as something really precious, and we still can't trust it to be its true value, because it's been totally manipulated somewhere else against a fiat currency. And that always makes me second think how much I put into it as an investment when I look at what I'm trying to achieve over for me personally, over the next 10 years, and as a hand-me-down investment, which brings me on to Bitcoin.
Yep.
You're a massive Bitcoin boy, aren't you?
I am, yeah. I am.
And I've fallen into that as well. So how did you find Bitcoin, buddy?
I found it through friends, and the story goes back to the mania in 2017, right?
Right, yeah.
And leading into 2017, I had a bunch of friends who had all been told to buy Bitcoin by each other and by some other friend, and they were all buying Bitcoin. And at the time, I was, familiar with trading stocks.
Yeah.
And all my friends were saying, you got to get Bitcoin, you got to get Bitcoin. And I was going, oh, Bitcoin, what's that? Right. Well, that's not worth anything. Like, where's this intrinsic value? And again, my ego got in the way because instead of going and research this thing, I just kind of looked at the chart and I said, look at that. This is going to zero. Right.
Yeah.
And so then over the following weeks and months, the price kept going up and up and up in this big parabolic curve. And all my friends were screaming and shouting, oh, you got to buy Bitcoin. It's going to $1 million a coin, all of this stuff. But what was really interesting to me about this was all of these friends that had bought Bitcoin had only done so because each other had told them to. And none of them had any history or experience in trading or investing at all. It's just one of them had bought Bitcoin and it had gone up, and they told the other one to buy Bitcoin and it had gone up, and it had sort of spread like this, right? Anyway, we then get to the point where Bitcoin is now right near the top of its parabola. And I remember screaming at my friends. I said, look at this. This is a bubble. This is a mania. This is nonsense. It's not worth anything. It's going to zero. Please, please, please sell it. And everybody laughed at me. Now, what then proceeded to unfold was Bitcoin crashed from 20 odd K and it got all the way down to about 6,000. And then it started to base around 6,000.
Yep.
And I still at this point hadn't done any research. I was still looking at this thing going, I know what comes next. Now, after the 6K bounces, 6K is going to break. It's going to fail. It's going to go to 3K and then 1K and then zero. Right. Yep. That was my interpretation. And once it dropped from 6K to 3K, I thought, told you so. 1K next, right?
Yeah.
And then the chart started to slowly improve. Around 3K, it started to, and I remember thinking to myself, wait a minute. If this thing's going to zero, why is the chart slowly getting better? Why is it building a base at 3K? Why is it putting in this classic textbook bump and run reversal? And I remember thinking to myself, something's not right here. This thing would have been significantly lower than 3K by now if this was truly going to zero. And that's what led me to start to take a good look and a deep dive into Bitcoin. I read the white paper and my mind melted, completely melted. And I was so annoyed at myself because I'd even heard of Bitcoin multiple years before this. I knew people that would use it for the Silk Road, right?
Sure.
And even back then, I can remember them saying, oh, we bought Bitcoin and it went up to $150 a coin. We made so much money. And I remember, what is this? Like, I don't care, right? I don't care. And
mate, can I just butt in a second?
Yeah.
Can I just pause it for 1 second because I need a wee?
Yeah. You crack on, mate. You crack on.
Thank you. Sorry. So obviously you got to a stage when you first heard about it, you just looked at it as a trading asset or whatever.
Yeah, like I said, we got to 2018 and I was thinking, I know what comes next. It goes from 3K to 1K and then from 1K to zero.
Yeah.
But the chart started to quietly get better. And I remember looking at it and thinking, hang on a minute, things that get better on the chart, they do that for a reason, right? If it was really going to zero, it wouldn't be quietly improving. And so that's what made me read the white paper. The white paper completely blew my mind, unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Yeah. And from that point on, I took what was at the time, at least, a significant chunk of capital to me personally. Yeah. And I threw it all in on Bitcoin. Yeah. And I went on to study Bitcoin almost every day since then.
Okay.
And I have watched it grow and watched it mature and watched it develop. And I continue to DCA in all the way up until, what year must it have been? I DCA'd in so I put a big chunk in at around 3K. I DCA'd up to 10 and then it went from 10 to 14 and it crashed back down. And then I continued to DCA down and back up to 10 again. And then from there, it went from the 10 to the 69K or whatever the local top was.
Sure.
And I've been trading it ever since. And yeah, and that's how I got into Bitcoin. That's how I managed to sort of booster my overall performance. And the funny thing about Bitcoin is that a lot of people like to look over the fence, right? They like to look over the fence and see the grass is always greener. But if you could just DCA into Bitcoin and relax for a number of years, then you're going to outperform you're going to outperform everything.
Of course.
And this has been the way. And so being able to just be humble enough to say, I'm not looking for excitement. I'm not looking for the next flashy thing. I just want to DCA and stack stats and put it in cold storage and wait a few years. And it's amazing how well that has performed.
Okay. So if I can quickly kick back on what you just said there, go back a little bit and ask a question. What was it that was that light bulb moment when you read the white paper? What was it that made you think, oh my God, what is this?
I've never seen something so perfectly engineered in my entire life.
Okay.
Satoshi thought of absolutely everything, from the way the difficulty adjustment is made every couple of weeks to account for the new miners that join the network, from the way that the halving schedule was predictable to the way the hard cap supply is permanent. There was the fact that it's decentralized. There's no one whose door to be kicked down, or there's no CEO to hold up at gunpoint and tell them to close it off. It is an unstoppable network. And like I said, I've never seen anything so perfectly engineered. And there's an analogy here, right? Because gold is like the best money that the planet has ever found, right? That's the best money we had available to us. But Bitcoin is so much better than gold because it has been engineered specifically to be better than gold, right? It took the foundations, it took the things that gold possessed that made it good money, and then it improved the things like the divisibility, the portability. And so we took what was the best money found on Earth and made it into the best money that the world has ever seen.
Sure. So would you say to truly understand Bitcoin, you need to truly understand what gold was and what it meant to the financial industry? Then you'd understand Bitcoin even better. Would that be right?
I think the truth is, to understand Bitcoin, you need to understand so many things, right?
Sure. Yeah.
You need to, first of all, you can understand how the Bitcoin protocol works. That's one thing. You can understand how mining works. That's another thing. You can understand digital scarcity, portability, immutable ledgers. You can understand gold. You need to understand gold to understand how it builds upon that. But you also need to understand things like fiat currency, fiat debasement, the debt that fiat currency is built on. And the reason that fiat debasement is so certain is because the debt continues to increase, and the only way to service that debt is to inflate the currency and debase the currency. So you need to understand all of these things, how central banks function, geopolitics. There's so many topics that encompass a true and total and complete understanding of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so brilliant to learn about, is there's always something that I can't tell you how many light bulb moments I've had over the years. I had the initial one, and then the more I studied it, then I was like, oh, wait, it's actually unhackable. Like you can't actually hack it. And even if you could hack it, there was another light bulb moment for me where even if you could hack it, you're incentivized not to. That's the genius of the construction, right? So even if you could decide to build an entire warehouse full of computers, even if you could get hold of the chips, even if you could get hold of the electricity, even if you could afford to attack the network, right? You're only going to get block dominance for 10 minutes before the nodes detect it, kick you off the network, and then reroute around you. Yeah. And therefore, all of those billions of dollars invested attacking the network would have been for nothing. So it's literally been designed so that you can be incentivized instead. If you're going to go through the hassle of acquiring all the chips and making the mining rigs and getting all the electricity, you might as well just mine honestly. And I've never seen anything that incentivizes honesty in the financial system.
Yeah. It's a weird one, isn't it? I love it because you're almost saying, well, you are saying what you're saying, but for me, when I listen to you saying what you're saying, it isn't about, for me, initially, I'll tell you my story with Bitcoin in a minute.
Yeah.
And initially, like anything, it was just money. What's this worth to me? What's it going to make me? In the fiat terms? That's all I saw. All I saw, which is what most people see, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But over the last, practically year and a half, 18 months, to me, it isn't about Bitcoin. It's about what I learned from Bitcoin. It's what it's made me look at. It's the understanding and the rabbit hole of what is money. What is it? It's opened so many avenues of blowing my mind of the whole, right from the crazy hamster wheel of how we try to just live from a day-to-day basis on earning a currency that apparently is going to give us what we need, right to what value is, not just at a financial level, but a personal level, at a psychological level. It's opened so many doors, and whoever Satoshi were a group, whoever they were, is, I don't know. It's almost, it sounds really stupid, but it's almost a spiritual awakening of who we are has made me feel. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, 100%. Because this is the thing that's so special about Bitcoin, right? Is we have a financial system which is essentially built on evil, right?
Yeah.
It's built on enslavement. It is built on indebting the masses and making you slave away at a job that you don't like, so that you can take that small salary that's barely enough to get by. And these days, for the younger generation, they can't even afford to buy a house, right? They can't even afford to put a roof over their head, let alone raise a family and put meat on the table. So the entire system is built on evil.
Yeah.
And then along comes Bitcoin. Yeah. And Bitcoin is inclusive, it's permissionless, it's decentralized. All of these things make it completely the polar opposite of any kind of financial instrument we've ever seen before. And gold is the next closest thing, right?
Yeah.
And gold has absolutely got its purpose.
Absolutely.
But there's something about Bitcoin, like it's funny, the community of Bitcoin has so much infighting.
Yeah.
But despite the infighting, they are a net giving population, right? They are, this is the funny thing about Bitcoiners, right? They argue and they berate this whole Bitcoin narrative. You got to buy Bitcoin, you got to exit the system. I do this on my channel all the time, right? How many times have you heard me say Bitcoin is the exit?
Yeah.
Right? The only wrong allocation to Bitcoin is 0.
Yes.
Right. And at the same time, I'm not doing this because I am trying to say I told you so, or because I think because I want to pump my existing Bitcoin. My Bitcoin's going up, whether or not anyone else, you know, nothing I say is going to affect the price of Bitcoin. Absolutely. Right? Bitcoin's going to do Bitcoin things, and it is what it is. Yeah. But the reason I do this and so many other Bitcoiners do this is because this is really our one hope, right? If we're going to have a future financial system, we really have two choices. They could be CBDCs, which is the current slavery system we have, but multiplied by 1,000 times worse. Or we could potentially have a chance at having a distributed, permissionless, decentralized, peer-to-peer network that is money you cannot confiscate. It cannot be confiscated. I mean, that is so powerful. And again, all of those things kind of tie into gold and silver, right? Gold and silver in your hand can't be confiscated. I mean, assuming someone's not going to kick your door down or whatever.
100%.
But it's not quite as divisible or portable. I mean, good luck getting abroad undetected with 20,000+ pounds worth of precious metals.
Absolutely.
Right? But this is what I mean by Bitcoin. It took the best money we had and it improved it. You can memorize 12 words in your head and you can go anywhere in the world undetected. And again, it's easy to sit in the UK or the US and say, well, why do I need to do that? Right. But if you were in some type of Afghanistani war zone, then you would be very, very incentivized to be able to memorize 12 words in your head and cross the border undetected, right? Yeah. So Bitcoin is many things to many people. We're in a privileged position that we live in a world where we can see it as an investment and a debasement hedge and an exit to our current system. But make no mistake about it, elsewhere in the world, in third world countries where they're already in triple-digit inflation, this is a way for them to actually survive, to actually maintain purchasing power so they can continue to feed their families. And it's so much more powerful than most people realize.
Sure. I think it's just a great example. You know Cobra Stacker, don't you?
Yeah.
We're pretty good friends, and we talk quite a bit off of social media. And he kept saying to me, like, why Bitcoin? Why Bitcoin? And it was almost, he won't mind me saying this at all. And I think he's actually openly said it on his channel. I used to say to him, mate, I can't tell you why. You need to go and find out, and then you'll know why for yourself. It's and for me, I kept saying it to him, and he's going, "Oh, just tell me, is it worth getting?" I said, "I don't know. Find out for yourself." Anyway, I can't remember. I forwarded. Who was it? I don't know. I forwarded a documentary on Bitcoin or something that had been out for a while, and it's been doing the circulation and whatever. A really good sort of overview of what Bitcoin is and how it's affected, different bits and pieces, and how it could affect. I sent it over to him, and he finally watched it, and he rang me the following day, and he went, "I get it." I said, "Now you know what to do, don't you?" And he went, "Yeah." And he's been buying ever since. And I said to him, and he actually said to me, he said, "Thank you so much, because I could not have got it if you told me what to do. I had to hear it and see it for myself, almost like your white paper experience."
Yep.
For you. And I think probably one of the biggest frustrations I see in the Bitcoin YouTube setup is that people I think we have to find it out for ourselves. It's no good just saying to someone, "Do it." Okay, it works for some people, because it's bigger than just do it, isn't it? It really is bigger than just do it. It's a deeper understanding of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, understanding what money is, understanding what the fiat system is, understanding what the treadmill of life is, and seeing it for ourselves. And then you get it, and then off you go. You go on your own rabbit hole, and then you either get off a naught, which hopefully people do, and then keep educating yourself on all aspects of finance and how it affects you. Would that be true? Would you see that?
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying right at the start of this, right? Yeah. When you remember we were talking about the fear of failure versus, the fear of living your life in a job that you hate, or in an existence that you're unhappy with and unsatisfied with.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same with Bitcoin, right? It's like you can have the fear that you might buy Bitcoin and it might go down.
Yeah.
But to my mind, at least, the far bigger fear is that we enter a world where Bitcoin thrives and we just sat here and did nothing. We just sat here and sat on our hands and didn't take part in. I mean, this is potentially as big as the internet, if not bigger. We're talking about potentially a new form of money that is ethical, that is anti-war. This is the other thing, right? Fiat currency is backed by proof of war, right? The thing that actually gives the fiat currency value is the governments are willing to deploy military to defend it.
Yeah.
Right. And now if we take that away and we replace it with Bitcoin, where instead of proof of war, it's proof of work by the miners, suddenly there is no need to defend the currency with violence anymore. No. So we're talking about a completely different shift into what could potentially be an entirely new ethical system for the first time in human history. Something that cannot be abused. Like I told that little story of the goldsmiths that kept the villagers' gold in the vault and then issued too many paper claims. You can't do that with Bitcoin because it's a ledger that everyone can see. It's an immutable ledger, right? There's no need to deploy military to invade and go to war to defend it because we have computers that do that. So there are so many levels to this thing, and you do need to take your own path to enlightenment. Somebody could tell you all of this stuff over and over and over again. And you kind of need to see it for yourself, like you were just saying with Cobra.
Yeah.
But once you do see it for yourself, you can't unsee it.
No, you can't.
And it is a one-directional rabbit hole. People that become orange-pilled, right? People that see the light of Bitcoin, if you will, they don't then unsee it.
No.
You either got it and you're invested in it and you're there to the bitter end, or you didn't really get it and you just bought it and then you sold it, right?
Absolutely perfect. And from my own point of view, crikey, 10 years ago. No, it's longer than that. 11 years ago, my children and I, we was chatting away, and when I was on the internet, I kept seeing this Bitcoin thing going on. And I was looking at it thinking, my God, what's all this about? Similar to you, but we're talking about what? Oh, 2012 for me. And I even chatted to my youngest boy, which they knew about Bitcoin more than I did. And he's 21 now, go back 11 years. So he would have been 10. Yeah. Heavily into gaming and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember having a conversation in our lounge at the time saying to them, what do you reckon of this Bitcoin? Have you heard of this Bitcoin? I think 10 years of age he was.
Mm-hmm.
He said, yeah, Dad. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that. It's probably a good idea. And I was going to deploy £1,000 into it at that time, back in 2012, was that? Yeah, 2012, which would have bought me quite a bit of Bitcoin, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And I sat there and I thought, oh, nah, I can't do it. And it was a really weird experience for me, Camel, because my head was saying, yeah, go for it. But my heart was saying, yeah, go for it. But my head was saying, the kids are young. We can't just gamble on something like that. You know,
Yeah.
money was important, you know.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got bills to pay and whatever. What I found fascinating is my youngest boy was saying, yeah, go for it. It makes sense. And I thought, Jesus, 10-year-old saying that. What's going on about? Anyway, I didn't do it. Hindsight's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I wished I had. The counter argument to that, for me personally, I was thinking about it the other day, was if I'd done it then and then gone through that stupid market of 2020 when it went skyrocket during COVID.
Yeah, into 21, yeah.
I would have sold it. I would have sold it back into fiat because I didn't know any better. I would have done. I know I would have done. Probably 90% sure we would have bought another property, rented it out and all this sort of stuff, thinking we did kings and queens and whatever. So I'm kind of pleased it didn't happen, because in 2020, oh crikey, where are we? 2022. Last year was 2022, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It all appeared on my radar again back in February, January of that year. And I thought to myself, my God, why is this? I don't even know why it appeared to me when I was flicking through whatever on YouTube. My son's obviously a lot older, and we went for it. I actually listened to my heart instead of my head this time. It was just, okay, you're ready. Doesn't matter so much now. You can afford the risk. And we went for it. And I also went down this stupid rabbit hole of Ethereum and all the other stuff, you know, because I didn't know any better. And little did I know I was getting into a crazy bear market.
Yeah.
And I think I bought in my first Bitcoin. I bought in at 30. Might have been about 30,000.
Okay. Yeah.
And then it went on the little pump up to about, I think we bought some more because like anyone, you get a little bit excited and you get into the hype and you're looking at all the shit that's going on YouTube and everyone pumping it up and whatever.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was doing, buddy. But it just felt right. And then, I think we bought in when it was pumping up to, I don't know, 38, 40, something like that.
Yeah.
And then it went. It went the wrong way. But on that process, and I give my son a lot of credit, really, my youngest boy, he said, Dad, no, this makes sense. It really, because he's pretty smart. He's pretty smart with figures and whatever. And he's really this is the beauty about having a young lad in the family, because he's right into his internet and innovation and everything going on in the world at his level. And he said, no, Dad, this is the right thing to do. Come on, let's look at it. And so we looked at it and we started to learn about it and not just listen to the stuff that we wanted to listen to. Quickly got rid of Ethereum. Sold that at a loss, but we took the money. And then the greatest thing we did was have a lot of belief in a bear market, and we DCA'd it. We both very quickly learned not to put large amounts in during a bear market, just DCA into it, which we did. And then I found your channel later on in the year, and that gave me lots of confidence. And to be honest with you, this I've never openly said this on my channel. Every time we saw like the FTX and all those bits that went on that year, me and my son used to go, yes, great. The price is dropping. We could get more.
Yeah.
But purely as in normal circumstances, because if we hadn't done our research and what we saw it for what it could be and believed in what it could be, and it made sense, normally we'd be going, shit, we need to sell. But no, we looked at it and thinking, I think we bought it right down into November of last year, which is where it roughly hit bottom.
Yeah.
And now we're in profit on everything we bought. And that's a great example of, believing in something, even though, Bitcoin's not nowhere near 30 or 1,000, but because we believed in it and we DCA'd into it right through that bear market, because we didn't understand what cycles were and anything else was, but we very quickly learned it. And the quicker we learnt about it and what it stood for, and now we just like, we're in a good place with it, and we've become, proudly to say, whole coiners, and that's quite an achievement, and we're in profit, so we're not worried. The wife's happy, and looking at it from a long-term point of view, I'm really pleased we went through that experience. It was a massive learning curve, and it gave me a lot of confidence in the protocol of what Bitcoin was.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on being a whole coiner, because there are 65 million millionaires in the US and only 21 million Bitcoin, and 3 million of those are lost forever, plus 1 million for Satoshi. So there's really only 17 million Bitcoin divided by 65 million millionaires. Yeah. So pat yourself on the back, because that's a huge achievement for sure.
Yeah, it is. And we're continuing to add, and it's really funny what you were saying earlier. As I was getting older, I need to calm down on a little bit, because I've achieved what I need to achieve, and spread that investment. Now personally, I wouldn't say too much, but, we can look at other investments like MicroStrategy, blockchain, blockchain stocks and shares.
Yeah.
Obviously I really do like what Tesla's doing, and I think it's got a head start on a lot of things. So we're spreading that cost. And the nice thing, Camel, is my sons are so into it all as well.
Yeah.
And it's a really funny saying, and a lot of people won't get this. Is my wife definitely doesn't, but quite often me and my son turn around and say to her, we don't know, but for some reason we know.
Right.
That says it all.
Yeah.
It's really weird. And that gets back into what you were saying about that your understanding, and what you were saying about Bitcoin and what it stands for and the protocol and how it can change things. It's a very interesting time that we're in.
Yeah. And for me personally, I, for a long time, have thought that there's not really any risk. And do not confuse this as me telling people buy Bitcoin, there's no risk. Okay. Exactly, this is my own personal perspective on Bitcoin. But for a very long time, I have seen this thing as binary, right? And when I say binary, I mean, it's either going to do very, very well and become integrated into the world and reach millions per coin, or it's going to zero, right? And anything in between just doesn't matter. And the reason I interpret it from my own perspective as zero risk is because if it fails, then we're probably going to CBDCs, right?
Yeah.
And if CBDCs are a thing and they come with expiration dates and product locking so that they can say, no, Camel, you can't eat meat this week, or you know, you have to spend this within 2 weeks, or it gets donated to the local government or whatever it is, or oh, Camel, you were speeding the other day, so we're gonna, you know, dock your universal basic income for next week and you're gonna have to starve to death, whatever. If that is the world we're moving into, right, then you're not going to have anything anyway, right? Yeah. So from my perspective, it's like, get as much Bitcoin as I can, and if it goes to zero, well, everyone's screwed anyway, right?
Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
And that's why I say Bitcoin is the exit. Bitcoin is our one hope, and I hope it comes off. I really do, and not for my own bag's sake, but for everyone else. I hope that everyone can have access to a permissionless peer-to-peer distributed ledger. That's what I hope, and a non-confiscatable form of bearer asset that we can transact peer-to-peer, and that banks can't get in the way of, and the governments can't seize. That's, to me, infinitely better than the current system, and so much better than the CBDC system that could well be implemented. So yeah, that's how I see it. I think Bitcoin is hope and Bitcoin is freedom, and I really hope it succeeds.
Yeah, 100%. You'd led me into this CBDC thing.
Yeah, go for it.
You mentioned it. Oh, crikey. I'm going to ask you like a bit of a few questions, really. CBDCs. Now, I think I've heard you talk about the demise of the fiat currency. Yep. Actually, that'd be really cool if you've got time. Are you all right for time?
I am. Can we pause for 30 seconds while I nip to the loo, though?
Oh, mate, I need to go as well.
Okay. Happy days. Right. I'll see you in 30 seconds, right?
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, go for it.
Cool, mate. So you mentioned that CBDCs.
Yep.
There's been a lot of talk about it. I don't know whether you feel, I think it's maybe slightly not been the big topic of conversation as what it was maybe 6 months ago, but what's your feeling on CBDCs? And we won't go too mad, because I've got a feeling this could work into a part 2, because I haven't covered I think I've covered half the subjects of what I wanted to talk about, which is super cool. But yeah, with CBDCs, you know, are they coming? Are they going to be a, what's the way I want to put that? A way out to help the US dollar in recovering and resetting it? What's your feelings?
So my feelings on CBDCs, I have mixed feelings about CBDCs. I think on the one hand, if you believe what they tell us, they have this habit of telling us what they're going to do and then doing it, right? Yeah. And if you listen to what they say, they're telling us they're coming. So if you take their word for it, then yes, CBDCs are coming. Now, part of me, the optimist in me, wants to say that, like a lot of things, when new things are introduced, there's a tendency to assume the worst, and then it doesn't quite end up being as bad as we assumed it would be. Yeah. So the optimist in me says that maybe they can roll these out without the horrible stipulations that everyone is worried about and concerned about, and rightfully so. But I have done extensive work on my channel over the year and a half-ish that I've had it. And if you look at the white papers for these CBDCs, they do openly contain all of that horrible stuff, right? Such as expiry dates, such as negative interest rates. So you have to pay the bank to have your CBDC, such as product locking, so that they can say you can't have meat with it, or you can only spend this on trainers or whatever. Sure. So they also give the central bank a direct line to your account. Right. So instead of go central bank to, sorry, my dog is going crazy behind me. I don't know if you can hear that.
No, I can't actually. No.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine. Do you need to let him out or her out?
No. He's a lockdown puppy. I got him in lockdown, and he never leaves my side ever. So he lives in my office and sits on my lap a lot when I'm trading. He's a lovely dog, but yeah, we're inseparable.
What doggy? What sort of dog?
Yeah, it's a Staffy, a blue Staffy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's a really nice dog.
Name?
Say again?
What's his name?
Winston.
Winston. Oh, yeah. Very good name.
Yeah.
Very good name. Sorry, mate. Cool.
No worries. Sorry, he was making a lot of noise behind me. Obviously, didn't pick up, but it was quite distracting.
No,
So
cool,
anyway,
mate.
I think what I was saying is the problem is that with the CBDCs, the central bank will have a direct line to our accounts, right?
Yeah.
And instead of go central bank to middle bank and then a bunch of smaller banks underneath that and then to us, it would just be straight from the central bank to us. And the problem with that is there are in that scenario, there's now no regulation or rules or laws in place to prevent them from just taking your money or from seizing it or freezing it or from adding these stipulations. So I think my point is, on the one hand, it sounds like, yes, they are coming. On the other hand, it also sounds like they, if they are implemented, are going to be pretty nasty, right?
Yeah.
Less freedom, way more surveillance, way more controls. But there's another part of me where this doesn't quite add up in my mind, right?
Okay.
And that part is only the central bankers actually really benefit from this. So that even means the politicians, the government, the current middle bankers, all of those people stand to lose just as much as the average Joe, right? The regular citizen does.
Yeah.
And so part of me thinks to get these implemented, to get these through, we're going to need the governments and the lawmakers and all the banks to kind of say, yep, fine, allow it. Let's move forward with that. And of course, there's a huge multi-billion-dollar or trillion-dollar industry, the banking industry, which would essentially become obsolete, right?
Sure.
If we go straight from central bank to retail client, then there's no need for any of those banks.
Yeah.
So something doesn't quite add up in my mind. Because, like I say, if you're going to implement these CBDCs, then everyone's going to suffer apart from the central bankers. And so, sure, I mean, you take even the billionaires like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, are they going to be forced to have CBDCs? Is that
exactly?
Is that how it works? So something doesn't quite add up in my mind. But again, if you believe what they're saying and they have this habit of telling us what they're going to do before they do it, and you can read the white papers for these CBDCs, I've shown them on my channel, then by all accounts, they are coming. Now, are you familiar with the sort of tinfoil hat theory as to why these CBDCs were proposed in the first place?
No.
So without going into too much detail, maybe this is a conversation we could do on another episode.
Sure.
But we know the dollar is the current world reserve currency, right?
Yeah.
And we also know that all fiat currencies mathematically are guaranteed to go to zero over time, right?
Sure.
So what you typically see if you go back in history is as the world reserve currency starts to decline and collapse, you have a rising power that comes and challenges that and then ends up replacing that world reserve currency.
Sure.
As it stands, what would likely happen is if the dollar eventually goes to zero, whether that is, by the way, in months, years, or decades is kind of irrelevant. But if we assume at some point the dollar becomes worthless, just like it suffers the same fate as every other fiat currency in history,
sure,
then the next rising power that is set to take over the dollar is China, right?
Yeah.
Now, nobody, and I do mean nobody apart from China, wants the Chinese yuan as the world reserve currency, right? Nobody wants that.
Yeah.
And if you just look back in history, when you have, like I say, a world reserve currency that collapses and a rising power take its place, right? That is the fiat currency cycle. Since we can look back in history and see that, then we can kind of project forward into the future and say, okay, if the dollar collapses, China's going to take over. And like I said, nobody wants that to happen. So the whole great reset theory, the whole theory of rolling out CBDCs is, in theory, a way of resetting the system that prevents China from taking the place of the dollar as the world reserve currency. Sure. So instead of allow it to play out as it always has, we could, in theory, get in front of it, right? Have some kind of collapse and a reset and reboot the system with this new system, which is, I say fair, I don't mean fair necessarily to people like you and me. I mean sure. Fair as in it stops China becoming the world reserve currency sure. and enables perhaps for them to have a global reserve asset. Maybe they go back to a gold standard and then all these countries have their own CBDCs and they use some kind of gold standard or Bitcoin standard or whatever the thing is that they choose. And ultimately, the whole game plan would be everyone is essentially happy because everyone has their own CBDC and they're all perhaps backed by a basket of reserve assets. And like I said, that stops China from displacing the dollar as the world reserve currency, right?
Yep.
So this is the working hypothesis for why we've got CBDCs potentially coming down the pipeline. And then it begs the question, is that CBDC system better than just allowing China to become the new world reserve currency?
Sure. Oh, man. This is where I think possibly, I don't know. What do I know?
What do I know, right? What does anyone know?
What do I know? This is where I think possibly CBDCs could be the next evolution of money, as in a digital format linked into some sort of blockchain-y type setup.
Yep.
That helps money be accountable more efficiently, cutting out maybe the smaller banking system, maybe cutting out the smaller side of the financial system and benefiting a more centralized financial system. But I did question in the back of my mind whether the possibility of Bitcoin, I'll bring Bitcoin back in, could help out somehow in this new, I don't know what I'm saying really, Camel, to be honest.
I think I get what you're saying. You're saying, well, as I was just saying, we might potentially see this system where everyone has their own CBDC and they're all sort of linked and backed by a basket of world reserve assets. And I think I don't want to put words in your mouth, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're kind of suggesting that perhaps Bitcoin could end up in that basket of world reserve assets.
Sure.
Is that right?
Yes, definitely. As the core base.
So only in my wildest, say again, sorry?
As the core base of value. And then everything built on top of that.
Yeah. So only in my wildest dreams does Bitcoin become a world reserve asset.
Wouldn't that be cool?
It would certainly be cool. It would certainly be pro-freedom. And I guess it's possible. I don't want to say it's impossible because anything is possible, right?
Yeah.
And maybe the likes of the BlackRock ETF and all these institutions moving in on Bitcoin, maybe that's not so much to suppress the price and gain control as it is. Maybe they're just trying to get their allocation so they can make it part of a world reserve basket.
Yeah.
If I'm completely honest with you, CPM, I don't really see a world where it becomes a true world reserve asset, although I don't think it's impossible.
No.
Right? I don't think it's impossible, but you've got to keep in mind that the system is owned and controlled and dominated by a select few.
Sure.
And they're probably not going to be willing to allow Bitcoin in there unless they have a controlling stake. Right.
Boys Club. Yeah.
So
I know.
It certainly could be a possibility. I think gold plays a massive part in that world reserve basket. There's also a possibility they can issue this thing called an ESDR, a special drawing right, which functions as essentially a reserve currency that only the central banks can use. So there's a million ways they could potentially do this. Going back to what I said about the tendency of people to assume the worst and then for things not to quite work out as bad as everyone had thought.
Yeah.
If you think about the events of the past few years, the thing that spread around the world, right?
Yeah.
During that whole time, there was plenty of people that thought that was the end of the world and the population would be down to less than 1 billion within 12 months. And that, there was a million. There's a million sort of reasons to fear that was the true end of the world. And now we sit here in 2023 and a lot of damage has been done. I'm not underplaying that or denying that, but ultimately it was no way near as severe as the doomsayers were proposing, right?
I get where you're coming from, mate.
And so I do wonder if that is how the CBDC template will look. I do wonder if there's a whole bunch of doomsayers, including myself, saying, we're all going to be in a communist type Chinese controlled social credit scored episode of Black Mirror or whatever. Yeah. And maybe, just maybe, it ends up where they do implement these CBDCs, but they choose not to implement the level of tyranny and control that people like me fear the most, right?
Right, dude. That is the most perfect time to stop this.
No worries.
Because the only reason why I say that is that you're so on the same wavelength as me. It's unbelievable. But we recognize from that, we recognize that, okay, we are probably thinking outside the box, but going back to 3 years ago, we was all hit with something that maybe wasn't quite what we thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
So there's a good possibility that maybe something like a credit crisis or whatever is going to make this all happen again.
Yeah.
So that's a great intro into a part 2, I believe, of, okay, what can we do and talk about to protect ourselves around that?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I can talk for hours on credit events and
dude
and that sort of thing. So
I know you can. I know you can. It's great. It's fantastic. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
Will that be all right? Because like we've hit that for two and a quarter hours.
There's no point making this thing 5 hours. As much as I'd enjoy it, no one's going to watch 5 hours, are they? So
no, they probably aren't. I can't believe it. I could just talk forever, as you know, and you could as well. There's obviously a load of passion in what you do, and there's definitely a lot of passion of what I do, coming from 2 different perspectives, but with the same sort of outlook.
Yep.
There's one thing I do need to ask you.
Yep.
Because I did say to my I put it out to my community that watch my channel. Has anyone got any questions for you while I've got you on the channel?
Yeah.
And 365, you know who 365 is?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
He did ask. He said, apart from Ethereum and BTC, Bitcoin, what do you have your eyes on crypto-wise, if anything?
I would say I'm no longer really interested in Ethereum, first of all. Sure. I think Ethereum has been controlled and dominated and no longer functions as sound money. A lot of people seem to speculate that it's going to go up a lot. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But personally, I don't hold any Ethereum, and I haven't for some time now. I was trading it earlier in the year from a trade-only perspective, but I haven't even done that. It's been months, I think, since my last Ethereum trade. So I think it's important to start with that. I am not really a proponent of altcoins. I think you may well know this if you've already seen the channel.
Personally, yeah.
I honestly think they're just a distraction, and they serve to slow down the adoption and the progress of Bitcoin. I think a lot of people who are new to the space look at Bitcoin and they see the big price tag of $30,000 and they say, well, it's already made all of the gains it could possibly make, right? Yeah. So better to find this other crypto, which is trading at pennies, and buy that. But I think the analogy here to summarize this is during the .com rally pre-2000, you could have opted for Bing and Yahoo, right?
Yeah.
Or you could have just bought the fastest horse, Google, and sat back.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of how I see it with Bitcoin, right? Yeah. You could try to find the next Bitcoin. I don't believe there is a next Bitcoin. I don't believe any of these altcoins I've seen really solve problems that actually exist or have any chance at displacing Bitcoin. So I think if you can avoid the 1000x return potential, which you're probably not going to get if we're honest, if you can avoid that and focus on Bitcoin, you'll do okay. I will say this, the only other thing when you measure it in Fed balance sheet or M2 supply that has outperformed the rate of fiat debasement other than Bitcoin is big tech. So me personally, I focus and am focused on big tech and Bitcoin. And that is, at least according to the metrics and analysis I've conducted, that is the way to preserve purchasing power and increase purchasing power over the next few years. So to answer your question in short, what else in terms of crypto do I have my eye on? Honestly, nothing. And what else outside of crypto? The answer is big tech.
Oh my God, why did you just say that?
Why?
Because I just want to talk about that even more.
You can carry on as much as you want, mate.
I can't, dude, thank you for that. That was the only question I had. I'm going to wrap that up now. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you for having me.
Dude, anytime, I've been wanting this. I've always been a little bit sort of, what's the word? In awe. But I'm learning myself, I'm just as important as everyone else, and everyone else is just as important as me. And, I'm not going to shy away from my naivety of stuff. If I don't know something, I'll ask. And it's equally really cool to share some time with people that don't necessarily live the same life as me, but believe in the same principles. And I take that as a massive honor to share that my time and energy with people that are the similar as well. So I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you for having me, CPM. Thank you for supporting the channel right from day one. I really appreciate that. And let's do this again, I guess. Let's do this again.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. There's got to be a part 2.
Yeah, 100%.
Cheers, dude.
Cheers. All the best.